I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street.
Read my note from today.
Welcome back, folks. This is my interview with Angie Aparo. Angie as a musician has had hit songs as well as had several of his songs covered by some of the biggest names in music. In this episode we talk about how Angie got into music and the story of how Angie got signed by Clive Davis to Insta Records. We also talk about Angie's fairly recent stroke and how Siri was a significant part of his recovery. Also, Angie lets me play 2 songs. Buckle up, folks, this is a great episode.
Thank you.
You bet. Anytime.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to Fascination Street, Angie Aparo. Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, Angie Aparo.
All right, great. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your obviously busy schedule. I super appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. I love this stuff.
Oh, cool. Well, Mr. Angie Aparo, first, I'm sure you get this question a lot, but there's not too many men named Angie. Is there a story behind that?
Actually, yeah. My grandfather's name on my mother's side was Angelo. So I was, my middle name is his name, Angelo, and my first name's James, which came from my father's father. For some reason, I was talking to my grandmother, Angelo's wife, and my grandma said, "Hey, my middle name's Angelo," and we were talking about her husband, and she said, his friends used to call him Angie, and I used to hate it. And I was like, oh man, if my grandmother hates a name, it's got to be a great rock and roll name. So at that moment, I remember we were sitting at the table back in Atlanta when I was a teenager. And I said, wow, I'm going to go by Angie Aparo. And that's sort of where it started. I didn't really take it on until I was probably, mid-20s or so.
Gotcha. Well, that's a really cool story. I like that you sort of did it just because your grandma didn't like it.
Yeah, I was like, it sounds good together, Angie Aparo. And I was like, oh, she thinks it's really crazy. And I was like, perfect. That's like rock and roll.
That is pretty rock and roll. So where were you born and raised?
Born in Boston, but, and most of our family still lives up there, but my parents moved south to Florida before I remember even going. I was probably one or 2 years old, and then grew up, about half the time in Lakeland, Central Florida area. The rest, and we probably moved to Atlanta when I was 14 or 15, and I've lived there since then until I moved here to Hilton Head. Rock
on. What took your family to Atlanta from Florida?
My dad, he went to Tufts University in Boston. He had he was a chemist degree, and he ended up at this chemical company in Atlanta. He had those skills as a chemist, but he found that he was really a great salesman, and he ends up becomes president of that company, and then the headquarters was in Atlanta, and we moved here when he got promoted, I think, as I remember.
Wow, that's cool as shit.
He's still alive. He's a cool dude. He's done a ton of stuff in his life. The company ended up being bought by a Japanese company, so then he was making some trips to Japan, and then he kind of became too, it's a lot, What he really wanted to do was he wanted to build houses, so he kind of left the company probably when I was 18 or 19, and he went to build houses, which I ended up going to build a few years houses with him. I contracted for a little bit.
Wow. Those are some skills that are going to pay off for the rest of your life, my friend.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've actually built at least one of my houses. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. It is funny that it's just another art form in a way. It's just, I love the fact that you can write a song and you can sort of, if you go into the recording art form of it and you actually record it or produce it, you're like, oh, wow, there's my song. And a house is or a building is just such an amazing thing I've gone past some of them back in Atlanta where I'd be out riding on the north side of Atlanta and go past one of the houses we built. And it's like, oh, it didn't fall down. That's fucking great.
I haven't built a house, but I've done, I guess some light remodeling of the houses that I've lived in and owned.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's really a sense of pride and accomplishment when it's all done.
Amazing.
I think it was 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, my wife was fondly remembering some of the updates I did to this one bathroom in a house that we lived in, and, and this was 12 years ago. And she's like, "Hey, do you remember that bathroom?" And so, yeah, it's really cool. So I'm glad that you get to drive past some of those houses and, maybe, do you have children?
Oh yeah, my children are grown. But yeah, it's so funny. I went by the one I built for my family back then, and it's on the north side of Atlanta. My two kids, the first two kids we raised them in there until the divorce. But I went by it about a month ago, and it was kind of near the club where I was about to play. It is funny, man. You're like, wow, it is an amazing thing. That always, I guess, when I was young, I kind of wanted to be an architect, and I still kind of draw house plans now just for fun. It's just fun to me to. It's almost like it's like Tetris.
Exactly.
Tetris for human living.
Exactly.
It's very interesting.
I have a theory that all little girls want to be veterinarians and all little boys want to either work heavy equipment machinery or be an architect.
Yeah, I was hooked on the vet thing for a while as a kid because I just love animals and I had like birds and dogs and all kinds of crazy shit. But I think like in a way, you look at a vet and it's like sort of like the nurturing idea that women have. And it's weird, like the architect thing in men or boys is like, it is sort of their version of nesting.
Absolutely.
Like create something that you can have on a habitator. It's very interesting. It's like building your cave if you were a caveman, finding the cave or whatever.
It's 100% like that.
I think you're exactly right. There is a DNA kind of thing in it. Kind of funny.
So you're growing up in Atlanta. When did you decide to get into music? Like what drew you to music as a performer?
I mean, that really started when I was the first time I was on stage. I think I was in second grade, and I just felt my mother sang, but not professionally. There was all that there was music in the house kind of thing, and which is kind of crazy. That's really what most houses had back in the day. There was music somewhere. There was either on a radio or there was a piano in the room. There was just, just a little backtracking. But it's funny now that it used to be that any band you formed, everyone could sing. The drummer, the bass player, and this is why we ended up with these bands in the 70s, from the 40s, that it's just like everyone could sing because they really were coming out of church. It's like everyone just sort of sang. It wasn't a big deal to be a singer. You might have better pipes than another person, but it is odd that I didn't grow up in that same kind of thing where there's music in the house, but I just went on. Actually, the story is that my mother says I went to her. I think she said, I said, I want to take this. It was Christmas time. And she said, I'm going to take this Christmas record. I'm going to sing along with the song. And she goes, is it like show and tell or like are you doing stuff? She's like, no, I'm just going to do it and sing for the class. And she's like, what? So apparently I went in second grade. I was going to Catholic school back then. And I went up to the nun and I said, I want to sing the song. And she's like, okay, what's wrong with this kid? And apparently I put the record on and I sang to the record, just kind of made my own audience. I don't know if they liked it or hated it, but I wasn't able to sell any of my T-shirts because I was only second grade. But no, it was like my first real stage, and I think it sort of stuck with me. Obviously it did. So by the time we get to Atlanta, I was in high school playing like these hard rock clubs. It's funny, a lot of my friends that came up in that era, they have the same story, like, where it's sort of the Beatles thing where the Beatles were 15, 16, whatever, playing, the Cavern Club. And it just wasn't that odd, so I was used to play in a band. They were all like in their mid 20s and 30s. And I was this high school kid that could sing. And we were playing underground Atlanta. And, I'm playing till 3 a.m. And my parents were freaking out. And they came to me one time and they were like, there used to be in Atlanta, there was one of the Fame schools, like Fame, the movie Fame. There was like an arts high school. They were like, look, we'll let you go to this high school. And I had like, my long hair. I was like the hippies kid. And I was like, I'm not going to go to that, man. I play in a rock and roll band. so they just said, well, if you don't fail, they thought I was going to run away with the circus, to be honest with you. So I just, they're just like, I'm hanging out with like these adult men that play really well. It was a really good band. And I was just blessed for them to find me and me to find them. And they just put up with me, so they couldn't travel because I was in high school. But there was a lot of gigs back in the day, in Atlanta. And so we played underground Atlanta a lot. I'd get home at about 4 usually after the gig, sleep for 2 hours. And I go to high school, did it for 2 years. And I'd come home, go to bed. That's where I slept, did my homework, went to bed at it was a big school. So I was on early sessions. We had 2 sessions. and I was like 6:30 to 12:30, so I'd be home early, and I'd been do homework, jump in bed, and then I don't think some of this point I couldn't even drive. So at this point, like someone would pick me up as I remember, and go to the gig. It's so dumb. God. It's like I don't know if I could do that. Let my kid do that.
Well, that is remarkably, I guess, supportive and lax. I mean, there's no way my parents would let me do that. My dad has been in rock and roll bands for my entire life, and still there's no way he would let me do that.
Yeah, because he's seen what it really is. I guess all rock and rollers have it's all built in rebelness, being somewhat of just the defiant nature is what is the whole point of rock and roll. But I think on one side, they knew I didn't want to run away, but on the other side, they were like, he could run away, like he could just go, he could quit high school, So I think they probably made the right decision, psychological decision with me, because I'm still, at that point, your brain isn't even done yet. So, yeah, I'm with you, man. Yeah, I think the parent has to really make that call, obviously in the moment. You have to really find out where the kid is at. Are they really trying to break away, or they really just want to just play music,
Yeah, and, because, like you said, you could just as easily, if they would have put their foot down, you could have been like, all right, well then fuck it. I'm out of school and I'm going to go do this and I'll see you when I see you. So I think that was a pretty good decision on their part. Well done, parents.
Yeah. But I know. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you just want to play music. That's really what's going on for a young person creating, obviously there's a psychological reason going on. For me, it was just sort of like, I had depression as a kid and all that. It was just sort of helping, it becomes a medicine for the kid usually. In any kind of art form, I just think it's so obviously healthy for kids.
I think that's why play therapy is so big in, psychiatry and psychology and the mental health arena. Mm-hmm. Play therapy is huge. Huge, I know. It's powerful, man. It's like, the creation of anything or to play pretend or, it just opens the mind. The main thing it does is it plants you in the now. In any creative endeavor, there's no past or future. You're just here. And I think that's why in therapy, and, it was used in my stuff when I was younger, but it allows the mind to be really real, like really where it is, like and can speak to a real problem that that maybe it's put in the back of your own brain. It's been in your subconscious. And all of a sudden when you create, you're in the forefront, you're in like the 5% of your real brain that's on the front table, and you're sort of aware. You're obviously you're with God, you're with yourself. It's meditation, essentially. That's why I've looked at songwriting as always meditation. I think that as a society and just humans in general, I think we spend a lot of time trying to structure our children, giving them rules, what they can do, what they can't do, because we're trying to get them to be adults. But I think it's really important to be able to have that space where there are no rules and there are no lines, and you can be as creative as you want. And I think that helps, like you said, in all aspects of a child or a person. Absolutely. Even once you've been birthed into your psyche, as an adult, still is, and it is a great tool for a kid or an adult to even employ, even if they didn't learn it as a youth. I look at it like you can actually build a land of freedom, and just think about this in terms of someone that ends up in prison or is crippled, has a physical prison. And it happened with me with the stroke. You can create a whole endless world inside of a prison. You can use just those two kind of opposites and understand that you could sort of, when I didn't have a lot of I couldn't communicate well with people, but when I was trying to learn my language and stuff back, I had a world inside my head that had no rules. I could create. I couldn't speak it to it much, or it was just happening obviously right now, but I at least there is sort of an idea of, which I think I might have learned when I was young, where my parents go, hey, we don't want to take music away from you. They know I was writing songs every day, but we can build some rules around that, and within that you can have freedom. That's sort of an oxymoron, but kind of isn't. It's the idea. I don't know if you listen to Deepak Chopra or that stuff, but I'm a kind of spiritualist. I listen to Thich Nhat Hanh and Deepak, and I find it interesting that, like, just in science, you can go into a confined space, but you can go into eternity, because there's negative numbers go to eternity, go forever. They're infinity. So it's like there's eternal negative space for me inside of a finite space. And that's the way a little too weird and heady, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, I look at creation that way, that like I was sort of penned up by my stroke and had all these walls that I couldn't break, but I found this sort of eternal space within it.
that weird? I guess it's kind of weird.
No, that's very cool. I think that Deepak has come up on the show, but Thich Nhat Hanh has never come up. So well done, sir.
Oh man, I love Thich Nhat Hanh. I have like I'm a Jesus freak too, but you have like your gurus that you sort of gravitate to, where you are in your life. Yeah, he's definitely has popped up in the last year, kind of big for me. Kind of bounce between him and I love Deepak. Ram Dass is my hero. The usual. I tell you who else. Have you ever listened to which I had forgotten about? More philosophical is Alan Watts. Did you ever check him out?
No, not Alan. Everybody else, yes, but not Alan Watts. Tell me about him.
Oh man. Check him out and we can talk about it whenever we talk next or text me about it. He was sort of in the realm of Jung, but past that, but he may have even studied with him. I can't remember, but he kind of, his big heyday was probably, I want to say late 50s, 60s, 70s, in there. But the amount of lectures on YouTube they're so great. Just go check out Alan Watts. It's just an amazing thinker and still ties it in because his life was so crazy. I think he was an Episcopalian priest in England. He's English. And he ends up somehow in Japan and becomes a Zen master, like crazy, like amazing Zen thinker, believer, and sort of the rest of his life, which a lot of what you'll see on YouTube, he's still open to everything because he kind of referenced everything from Christ to St. Augustus, everything. But the Zen stuff is sort of surrounding it. And it's just freaking fascinating. You'd love it. Yeah.
Sounds dope. I'm definitely going to check that out. And so should everybody listening right now.
Yeah.
So what was the name of that band that you were in high school when you had all those adults with you?
The very first band was before we moved to Atlanta, was called Phoenix. And then the second band, the one with the grown men where I was sort of like still learning to drive, was Sabre, S-A-B-R-E, I think. And I'll tell you what's even crazy about the band is that I was going through all my storage unit stuff in Atlanta and I found the actual sign we built.
Oh, no kidding?
We took it's crazy. Like my guitar player was back then it would have been, he did like logos and that kind of stuff. But it wasn't digital design then. Obviously it was real pen and paper.
Yeah, graphic designer.
Yeah, graphic design, exactly, back then. And he designed it, and then I helped him. He kind of did it, but he took just a piece of like thin plywood, probably 1/4 inch, and he took a jigsaw and, laid it out and cut the whole thing out, and just beautiful. I found it in the back of a storage unit. Well, I can't wait to get back to a house of mine where I'm renting a place here in Hilton Head. It's massive. It's like, 8x4 piece of wood. I'd love to just have that in my studio, like the old band.
That sounds really cool. That's awesome to have that little piece of memorabilia.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sabre.
So, Angie, the way that I found you is I listened to a podcast called the Bar Star Podcast, and the host is a 30-year professional drummer named Stephen O'Reilly. And on that show, he has a segment called What Are You Listening To? And so no matter who he's talking to, or even if he's doing it by himself, he always talks about what he's listening to. And apparently he has seen you in concert like 9 or 10 times and is in love with you. And
oh, wow.
So because of that, to be quite honest with you, I had not heard your name before.
Oh, no, that's great.
And so based on that, hearing him talk about you on his show, I looked you up and I really got into it.
Hey, streetwalkers. Well, you're not literally streetwalkers. But now that I've got your attention, I am Stephen O'Reilly, and I have a podcast called the Bar Star Podcast. And since you're listening to the Fascination Street podcast, I think you should check out my show. It's just as interesting without all the famous people, because Steve has connections that I just do not have. But if you dig podcasts about music, working musicians, and other random shit that I decided to talk about, based around music, of course, because that's what I do. I'm a working musician for the past 30 years, then you need to check out the Bar Star Podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcast, on any platform, and make sure you check out barstarpodcast.com. Now back to the one and only Steve Owens and whatever the hell he was talking about.
And then when I heard Spaceship, that rang some bells. So I had heard you. I guess it had just been a while, and it had gone out of my consciousness. But I wanted to give a quick shout out to Stephen O'Reilly for basically setting this up with kind of without his knowledge.
Yeah, nice, man. It's awesome.
He actually talks about you on several of his episodes because he really, really digs what you're about.
Oh, awesome.
So he's a good dude. Now.
Oh, that's awesome, yeah.
So let's talk about your first album. I believe it's called The American, right? In 1999?
No, well, the first one was my first indie.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, no worries. The first one was called Out of the Everywhere. I made it in Nashville. I wasn't really a Nashville writer. I was just writing by myself. But I was in love with, I'm a Neil Young, one of my, heroes and of the many. But I was listening to a ton of Neil Young, and I wanted to meet David Briggs. Neil had two David Briggs. He had one the producer and one the piano player, two different people. It's crazy they had the same name. So I knew that David Briggs, the piano player, had a studio on the road called House of David. And somehow I had a connection to his engineer. And I think I got in there like, midnight to 6 a.m. kind of thing because it was cheap. And I went to Nashville and made the record. And I was like, I'm going to get David Briggs to play on my record. And it's like, no way, man. I knew he lived above the studio. I get there doing the first track. I think it was called 1893, but it's a real Neil Young-y thing. I was going to do it solo. First, I was going to start the record. Just let's get this one out of the way. I know I could knock this out. Tom, I think, was the engineer. I said, Tom, can you see if David's upstairs? He can just come down and hear me. I can at least meet him, whatever, one of my heroes. I said, well, I'll try, man. And somehow David came down and he heard me play that. It's like a one take thing. And he told Tom, he said, I want to play on this record. And I was like, holy shit. So David Briggs walks out, gets on his grand piano, and he's on about half of that record. The first thing we did was a song called Seed. They still use numbers. It's just amazing how they use numbers in Nashville. They don't use chords. They write a number chart. So like, it's 1, 4, 5, if it's in C, it's CFG. They can, translate and do everything just by numbers. And so I sat down at the piano. He said, play it for me, Angie. So I played it one time, sang it. He did his numbers and we cut it and was like, we did like the first take and was like, I guess that's it. And he's like, well, let's just do another one just in case. And we did the second one. I think we used the first one and it just went on. The whole night was like that. Everything was 1 or 2 takes, him on piano. It's just, oh man, go listen to that stuff. Go listen to Seed and him on a song called Wonderland, which did end up again on The American. So I finished that. I think the first one's 95, 6 it comes out with David Briggs on it. And through him now I'm getting like all these players. So we got Robbie Turner from the Highwaymen, played with Cash and all that. He comes in and plays pedal steel. It was just like, I was in a dream for 3 days. It was the craziest thing. I'm like, how did I get all these people? And it is a spiritual thing. Like, you're like, well, I just believed in, I'm a believer in that and just believing. I look back on it and go like, wow, I need to be that. I need to be that my whole life. Just be in the believer state of being. Just all, the power of attraction just all comes to you, But anyway, that was the first one in 96. And then because of that record, it got to Matt Serletic, producer, who then, took me to Clive Davis. And that's where The American came out, I think in 2000, the actual release. So can I play one of those songs that has Dave on the piano? Oh, sure. Do you want to pick it? Play Seed. Okay. It'll be fun, yeah. It's funny when people hear it. I want to see what they think, but it'll be fun. Cool.
Sometimes I wonder where you are. Sometimes I wonder how you stand the dark. There is a time for every seed. Once there were 2, now there are 3. Wrestle your heart into the ground. Is there enough love to go round? Ooh, I wrote this song for the bounty of life. Ooh, don't you are. Sometimes I wonder, and I just say, yeah. There is a time for every seed. Don't confuse what you want with what will be. Wrestle your heart into the floor. Is there enough love? Do you want more? Say my prayers. I shaved my head. He's looking for reasons to drag my ass out of bed. Selfish world, selfish me. Oh, but the politics of this girl will never set us free. What nature has in mind. Sometimes I wonder who you are.
So, did you say Clive Davis?
Yeah, so that record, Out of the Everywhere, with David on it and all that, ends up finding its way to Matt Serletic. Matt Serletic produced Matchbox 20 and Aerosmith and all that crazy stuff, but he was in the beginning. He had just found Matchbox. So he gets it, and he actually had come out of Collective Soul also. He was a piano player in Collective Soul for a while. But Matt Serletic's making his way up, and he kind of falls in love with my stuff, and we hit it off. And he wants to get me signed with just me and the guitar, even though we make a big sounding record. You know, he wanted the label to just get me, quote unquote. So we went around, we shopped for about a year, and we had enough offers, but they weren't the right ones. And Matt was so big by that point that we were going just straight to the president. So he had access to the president of every label. So everything from, we did Sony, we did Columbia, we did Hollywood Records, we did all of it. Warner Brothers was kind of the closest we wanted, the bite we wanted. Kept going, and it just wasn't happening. It was good, but it wasn't like what I guess Matt really wanted. He wanted a lot of freedom to make the record on our own, And so finally, the last person who wanted him to see it was Clive. So we fly up there, and I was kind of bummed by this point. I wasn't really into it because it was just going so slow. And by that point, you think it's never going to happen. It's been almost a year. And Matchbox 20 now is massive, and I'm thinking Matt's just going to, he's so busy. He's not getting time for me in a few months. And we go play for Clive, and I played in Clive's office for an hour, and he freaked out, and I freaked out, and he signed me right there. So he fell in love with it, and he loved the idea of Matt helping me push this along because he's such a great orchestrator. And he's just amazing. He's a real orchestrator and just an amazing producer. So Clive just sets us free, and we make the American in several different studios from Miami to wherever. Of course, this is back in the days when there was real money in the industry. And I'm pretty sure that Clive never even heard the record till it was done. He gave Matt that amount of freedom, and Cry was on it. So when we're going to play for Clive Davis, Matt says he'd heard this demo of the song Cry, and Matt was like, you got to play Cry for Clive. And I was like, at that point, I'd literally never played the song live ever in my life. I didn't even remember the song. The song was already 8 years old. I'd written it when I was like in my early 20s. I was like, man, I don't even know the song. I don't know the chords. I don't know the words. I literally know nothing. We're on the plane. We're going to go into Clive's office, play for Clive. We're going to leave and get on the plane and go back to Atlanta. We're up there for under 8 hours. And so we get to Arista Records, and there's a little lobby. We're waiting to go see Clive, and I'm literally on the phone with my wife at the time. Literally, I've told this on stage. There's lyrics that are literally in a box in a closet that I at least had collected them all, and they're typed up or whatever, back in the day. And she finds them. I'm writing them down with a Sharpie, and the secretary gives me they have a piano in the old lobby of Arista. It was a little upright. So I'm on the piano. I'm like, I knew it was in E. I had a few. I knew it was in 6/8. I knew it was like a 3, 4, 6, 8 thing. I knew that, and I remembered the E thing. I remembered the melodies, but I was just like, what the hell? So I found it somehow, and then figured it out on guitar, and then went in there and just played it for Clive. And I just said, hey, man, Matt wants me to, I just told him the truth. I said, Matt wants me to play this for you. I don't know this song. I'm going to stumble through it. I'll read the words, and I'm going to be, my head's going to be buried in these charts. I got through it, and, Clive's like 4 feet from me. We're on 2 like folding chairs. I'm playing directly to him, and he has like a handful of A&R people behind him. We're in his office. And I get done, and he loves it, and he goes, man, that's a hit or whatever. And I said, maybe. I don't know. I don't even know it yet. And he said, can you play it again? And I was like, I know it a little bit more. And I played through it. I kind of got a little more powerful with it. And then I get done, and he said something very interesting. He said, can you just recite the words to me? And I was like, oh, okay, very odd for me. And that's how it started. And then I did Spaceship. He loved that one. I played it twice. That one twice. Every one that he loved, I played twice, and he wanted to hear the lyrics. Very interesting process. And I think years later, I asked, it's either him or one of his A&R, like what that was for. It's sort of like he just wants. What I got out of it was that he just wanted to know. We love the melody. I love the melody. He likes the hook of the melody. But what is it about? Which is a great idea to think of in terms of writing a song. Like, does the lyric by itself just tell you something and draw you in? So it was great. We meeting Clive, and he signed it. And then I think it was probably took about a little under a year to finish the record. And then my career was on the way.
So how long were you with Arista Records?
Just that album, because I don't know if you remember, this is when Clive ends up getting pushed out of Arista, out of his own label. The big war between BMG that owned all of those labels, Arista being one of them. That was a big fight. Then he goes, and Clive, of course, goes and just wipes everyone up and forms, I think, Jay, and gets Alicia Keys. That's the first signing, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so that was quick. And then L.A. Reid took over because he was vice president, I think. And so he kind of took over and Clive left. But it was just the guy who signs you leaves, you kind of want to get out. So we kind of fought a little bit to get released, and they released me, and it was fine. And then I just went on to make the records that came on after it.
So there's no real bad blood there. It was just sort of a bad chemistry once Clive left.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Clive was amazing all the time, but when he left, we had an option to follow him. But when you're in the middle of a record, I mean, Cry was about to come out. And it's just sort of like, if we leave, this record's done. It's shelved. So we stayed. Maybe we should have followed him, but things were happening. The Spaceship video was still out on VH1, and then I think Cry was getting real close to being added to the Star Station in LA. And so you kind of everything's a risk in the industry. But we stayed with Arista, and then it just didn't fly. They were cool. We just had to go, and our guy wasn't there anymore. And then Matt and I Matt's still part of my publishing company stuff, so we're still sort of in business.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you felt when Spaceship took off and the American.
Well, it's weird to hear your thing on the radio. It's probably not as real now as it is now because terrestrial radio is so, not really what it was. But, when you're in a day where there is no streaming, there's barely any internet. I mean, in 99, we're still sending out our tour dates. We're sending them out on postcards. People forget that email was there, but it really wasn't the world we have now. So the radio was crazy. It was really like all you listened to, So when I heard Spaceship, it was being spun in Charlotte and Atlanta were the first 2 real cities. And it was just crazy. You just hear your favorite stations. So that was crazy. I'll tell you what is even crazier is when, I don't know if you knew how Faith Hill got to Cry was through that whole American record.
Well, I know that she redid it, and I want you to talk about that. So go ahead and start with how she found it and how she reached out and how all that worked, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, the story is kind of like, I've heard a few different stories because I wasn't there, obviously, when she heard it. So the American was still kind of going on a little bit, but, I think she cut Cry in 2003. So the American's sorting out, whatever spins we were getting are kind of fading away. And I think Matt I'm pretty sure he did a Willie Nelson record, I think he played with Willie, I think, at the CMAs. It's at a country event, and Faith was there. And what I remember hearing the story is that Matt met Faith backstage and said, man, I got this song you got to hear. And it was on a record that, almost did some stuff it hasn't. So it's a pretty fresh song. And I'm pretty sure he gave it to her, or at least he started the conversation. And then, not long after, I was getting a call from Faith saying, come by the studio. We tracked it, and I got to come in and hear some of the raw tracks. It was pretty crazy. It was weird because I'd never had a song with anyone else. I'd written my own songs my whole life, But it was interesting because Nashville, remember that, because the industry was massive too at that point. Nashville is still is on fire, but it was really on fire then. So it was powerful. It led to really great things with her and Tim and all that. They've still been very good to me.
Well, that is very cool. So I believe that Faith Hill's version of Cry, I think that was number one for 10 weeks or something on the country charts.
Yeah, it did well, but it might have been more on the AAA charts. I can't remember. Because what she did, which is kind of interesting too, and this is how I kind of got in not much of it, but a little bit of the Aerosmith space. This is another story. I'd love to ask Faith this too, but what I'd heard also is that she had thought about doing it as a duet with Steven Tyler because she loves Aerosmith, which who doesn't? But I'm pretty sure, because what happened is Steven couldn't do it, is what I think. Again, I'm sort of like riffing right now what I remember, but that's, I think, how she got to see, Matt didn't produce it. It was produced by Aerosmith's producer. I think it sort of was in that realm, and that's why I think he ended up producing the Cry. So it was more of like a rock track than a country track in a way, and I think that's why it did better on the AAA stuff, I think. But yeah, it was interesting. And then after that, she took me out a few times to go sing it with her when they do the Soul to Soul shows, her and Tim. So we had a few good duets. On one of her NBC specials, we did a version of me and her just doing Cry together. But yeah, they're just awesome people. It's been so good to me. And that's what sort of led me to Nashville. Didn't ever move there, but I was just sort of going there half time because I was co-writing with people for other artists.
Very cool. And I believe her husband, Tim McGraw, didn't he cover one of your songs too, Free Man?
He covered Free Man, and then I co-wrote two songs on a few records ago, a song called The One and a song called Only Human. I think Only Human, he did a duet with Neo. Had a couple of those. I wrote one with the Warren Brothers and one with Ty Lacey. But yeah, Tim's great, man. He's awesome. It's kind of stalled now, but me and Tim and a producer in New York had a show. It's called American B-Sides. We had some really close action with Netflix, but it kind of faded. I'll hopefully get it back, shopping it again. But pretty cool thing called American B-Sides. It's a reality thing, but it's more of the story behind the story. So yeah, hopefully they'll try to get that alive again in 2019.
Take that back to Netflix, because I think they're buying everything right now. They're just writing checks left and right. So take it back to Netflix and see what happens.
Would love to take it back. It kind of stalled for a minute. I think Tim got obviously really busy. But yeah, I think you're right. That's the one thing I do love about the shift in entertainment industries, all of them, is that it always was, but now it's a completely content-driven industry. I mean, the more content, the better, because then you can push more subscription ideas or models. But yeah, you're right, man. That, and even I don't know if it's happened yet, but I thought AT&T and even Verizon are going to be big players on the content creation thing pretty soon.
That would not surprise me. I was blown away when YouTube came out with their own thing, YouTube Red or whatever the heck it is. It's everybody.
Right.
Everybody.
Isn't that great? It's crazy.
It is. It's really cool. So just as a side note, you were talking about, I guess, Aerosmith a few minutes ago. The drummer for Aerosmith lives about 6 miles from my house.
That's amazing. I love Aerosmith.
He drives around town in his like a shiny purple Lamborghini. It's pretty noticeable.
Oh man, I love them. I heard Back in the Saddle. I was somewhere in a store. And it's so funny how now you just hear it in like a store. I'm like, really? This was like rock, it's like still rock and roll. But now you realize that the people that bought it are me. They're like,
that's right.
I was buying it when I was 15 or whatever,
It's really funny that the guys who did Love in an Elevator are now almost elevator music.
It's amazing, man. But, it's just the nature of change, of what we loved is now it's 30, 40 years later. It's amazing. But what's crazy is how much those songs stand up. To me, in almost any Aerosmith track, and I love the old stuff, Toys in the Attic, all that stuff, but it's just so powerful. I can't imagine it being like a kid and seeing them somewhere in Boston or where, some club when they were just starting. It must have just been like, what?
Yeah, that must have been some crazy stuff. So let's talk about your stroke.
Okay.
Now, was it 2016?
Yeah, it was April 4th, 2016.
Hey, wait a minute. Isn't that the day that U2 sings about on Sunday Bloody Sunday?
That's the April 4th. It's when Martin Luther King, I think.
Yeah, April 4th. Man, that's a bad day.
Yeah, it's a bad day.
What happened to you, buddy?
Well, it's weird. It was so bizarre because they couldn't figure out what was happening because I had had my physical. I had a weird year. Like, I had my yearly physical like 2 months before. It was in perfect health, like no plaque, no stuff that you would have with a stroke. I love whiskey most of my life, but I never did a bunch of coke, and hardly ever, or actually once, which is a big stroke component. The first thing I asked you is, in the 3 hospitals I went to, do you do coke, or are you doing it now? Do you smoke? That's it.
Was it cigarettes or pot they were asking about?
Well, anything, but I think mostly cigarettes. But
Okay.
all 3 of those, I just haven't. I was really just a drinker most of my life. I said, I drink some whiskey or whatever. And they're like, no, that's for a different doctor. So anyway, I wake up. I'm not sick, but I'm like, it's allergies. It's April or whatever. Some allergy stuff. And I throw up, kind of dry heaving throw up, because I'm not really throwing up. I'm just sort of, I don't know, something. And the last time, my whole body just I thought I was having a heart attack. And it wasn't the stroke yet. This is why they didn't know what was happening. So I kind of grabbed the counter of the bathroom, and I literally was like, the only way I could explain it is like if your whole body just went like almost like shocks, like these shocks. It felt like, you have all these pressure points in your body, all these electrical points, and it's literally like I felt all of them at once, just these quick bursts. Went on like 2 or 3 times, and I literally was like, I thought I was having a heart attack. Then it went away immediately. I looked up, and my eyes were like a mess. My peripheral was sort of gone. Everything looked a different color, and I'm getting a really crazy headache. And I was like, damn it, I don't know what this is. And I was supposed to run some errands or whatever, so I go out and walk the dog, and now it's looking even crazier outside, and the colors just look weird to me. Like, maybe my neck's out. I'm thinking I'm going to go to my chiropractor, da-da-da-da. I go see them. They can't get me in. I go back home. Now the headache is outrageous. I've had headaches, but it's like, this is sort of like having a baby through the top of your head. It was the weirdest headache ever.
Wow.
And I'm like crying. And finally, it's time for me to go see the chiro. I drive there. The radio's going. I'll never forget this because it's so surreal. And I pull up to park. I'm in park. The car's running. And all of a sudden, my head starts buzzing. It feels like this weird buzz. And my pain's gone. I'm not freaked out yet because I'm sort of like, my head's buzzing. My door was open. Car was still running. Radio's still on. And then all of a sudden the radio goes off, which apparently, you go deaf and you get paralyzed for a second, depending on where the stroke hit. And mine was hitting in both those spots. So the radio goes off, and that's when I got like, what the hell? And then I couldn't move my hands. Now I'm freaking out. I don't know I'm having a stroke. I remember at that moment that you just don't sort of know anything. So I just was looking at the key. I remember looking at the key. It was the weirdest thing because I was trying to turn it off, but I didn't know what I was supposed to do. It's so bizarre because you're sort of in this thought process as a part of your brain's dying in a way. I couldn't get to the key. My hands were frozen. And then everything came back on. The radio came back on, which stroke kind of settled down, I guess, or whatever they call it. And then at that moment, I was like, fuck, I'm having a stroke. I knew immediately. Couldn't talk, or that kind of stuff, mouth all weird. Turned the car off. This is really some synchronicity. I get out and I look, the chiropractor's like 50 feet away, sort of walking drunk now. I'm just trying to get there and have someone call somebody. It's impossible. You can't do anything. You can't use your phone. I walk in, there's 2 chiropractors there. And the one I usually see, I've seen for 20 years, wasn't there that day. And the one I've only seen one time was there, and she had a stroke. And she knew. When I walked in, she was like, he's having a stroke. So, thank God. She pulls me in. She gets to light my eyes and all that. They call the ambulance. I'm on Hilton Head, South Carolina, which is very small, and kind of saved me because I was in a hospital within 15 minutes. They had blood thinners in me. So we get there, and they're like, they don't know why I'm having a stroke. They don't know what's happening, and I don't know what's happening. The pain's like back. It's crazy pain. I'm sort of, I don't know what I'm having. I guess TIAs, or I'm having small little stuff. They're looking at my head. They see the stroke. They just don't know why I'm having it because my blood work looks kind of normal. And somebody in the ER, because I don't remember any of this, my wife told me, but someone in the ER, I guess, said, I think it might be a dissection in his neck. And it's really rare unless you have it's usually like a car wreck, or I think requires like blunt trauma, or you just don't wake up and have a dissection. And it was. I guess they put a scan on my neck, and they saw the dissection in my neck, which is what caused the stroke 4 or 5 hours later. So I'm sort of like, my recovery was amazing because I just had great people around me. And also I think they got to me quick. And then that took me about 6 or 8 months to get my full capacities back. I still stumble a little bit, but a lot of that kind of therapy stuff. But the dissection is sort of still going on because they can't operate on it. But I'm getting close because it has to heal itself. So I'm like super blessed to come out of this thing. And so now I'm to the point where I'm obviously capable of having a conversation with you on the phone, which was the hardest thing to do when I couldn't see people's faces. And now the dissection is, I'll go back to the MUSC to do my checkup in a few months. And, I'm close to being healed because that was just in an aneurysm problem. They were worried about aneurysm with that. It'll be probably 3 years. Yeah, 3 years in April. And, my goal is everything's healed. We're getting off all the blood thinners. We're done. So pray for me. But the fact that I'm here talking to you is just, I've been blessed.
Well, I think that you sticking around a little bit longer has blessed a lot of folk. Before we get too far away from your neurologist, let's go ahead and give him a shout out. What is this hero's name?
Dr. Coley. He's in Hilton Head. He's amazing. Yeah, in fact, I've got to see him next month. They keep tabs on me, but it's a blessing too. But sometimes you just luck out with all the right people. And I ended up with, my vascular surgeon. Thank God I haven't had to use his skills because it's healing. But this is crazy. I end up at Emory in Atlanta because of the dissection. And then they're watching me, looking me over and watching me go, having my stuff with my guy, Dr. Veeraswamy. He's amazing. And then I lose my insurance and I end up having to go to the place in South Carolina. And this is crazy. That Dr. Veeraswamy in Emory, for some reason, transferred to MUSC and he was still my doctor.
Whoa.
Is that crazy?
Wow, that's really cool.
It's so crazy. It's just all of that synchronicity just sort of all lined up. And I had just these great people around me. So, yeah, it was crazy.
Okay, cool. I believe at the time you were in the middle of recording an album. Is that right?
Yeah, the one that came out the first of 2018. It's just the brain is so fascinating. And I guess from a songwriter, from an artist perspective, that's why I've just made my mission to just be how powerful the brain is. I'd say a quarter of the way into, I was sort of making it, but I didn't know what it was yet. And I had some songs half done, and I usually work all at once when I make a record. I don't really work on like this song, and I kind of get everything going at once, and it sort of tells me what to do. But I was just stalled, and I'll tell you, my neurologist, who is just amazing, he's the one that's in a way saved me because he knew I was a songwriter. He knew I was a singer. The amount of money you need for a ton of physical therapy, especially speech therapy, it's not enough for anyone. I mean, I had some insurance, but it's just not enough. And he said, I want you to go when you know what something is, because I knew what something was, but I couldn't tell you. So like I could hold my phone in my hand and I could not tell you what this thing was. So I could write in my head, but I couldn't write it down. So it's just this crazy shit. And so he says, when you know something, when you're learning the word or the thing, whatever you're trying to learn, he said, I want you to sing it. And he said, go to somewhere where there's a lot of items. So there's a grocery store right down the road from me, half a mile. And I'd go there and walk down the aisles and just, there's the ketchup, there's the mustard, whatever I could remember. And honest to God, I'm not kidding you. He told me to do that because he said, we teach kids language with melody. A, B, C, D, E, F, and all that stuff. And it literally, I swear to God, this sent my recovery into hyperspeed. So I was just, when I could get driving again, because driving is a whole other crazy thing. People don't understand what your brain does while you drive. It's just insane. I drive around just like, there's a white truck, there's a red car, just you're trying to remember colors. And I swear, man, it became exponential. I still sort of do it. It's so funny. I sort of do it almost nervously. I'm nervous point now. But he literally saved my career. And so I would say 6 months after all the recovery was I could get into the studio. I wasn't great at it because the computer is a whole other thing for your brain to do, to accomplish. But I could get in there, and I get in there for an hour or two at a time. It's just crazy. People don't know how much the brain works that you just become exhausted. It'd be like picture doing your taxes for 3 days, and not sleeping. Like that's how it would feel to go like work for 2 hours. So I did that for a while, and actually the Coming Back, which is there's a song on the record that I used Siri on my iPhone, was sort of speaking my words because I thought I was going to do a whole record. I thought I wasn't going to be able to talk. So when I went back to the record, I was thinking of like doing it with a rapper friend of mine, and I just couldn't make that happen. I couldn't work with anyone at that point. It was hard to communicate. And I went and grabbed my phone, and I was like, I'm going to make my record with Siri, and she's going to, sort of be my spoken word, and I'll sing the choruses or something.
what made you think to use Siri? I know that you said you had thought about some other avenues to kind of approach it, but what made you go with Siri? And did you have to get Apple's permission to put her on the record?
No, you didn't need permission. I don't know why that wasn't, because my manager at the point knew there was some reason that it's sort of in public domain-ish range, land for some reason. But on the front side of it, I just, I'm reading words to play a song. I'm just like so out of it. My neurologist said it'll come back, but at that moment you just don't believe it. I hoped. So I just looked at it like, I'm going to make this damn record. I don't care if I'm singing it or people are speaking my words. I don't care. I kind of accidentally, I was looking at my phone. I had some words on there because at this point I'm sort of able to type kind of cryptically. I had the mic on and I was trying to sing a little part, and I would always go to Siri. I would say, read my note today or whatever, because I was trying to find it. It would always be the first thing I was just working on. And she read it, and my mic was on, and I heard her. I was like, oh, shit. I heard her talking. She was off mic, but I could still hear her. And I was like, man, that is kind of cool. Really, really cool. And then I got into this realm. The first song I worked, a song called Church Bells versus the Television, which is the first song on the record. And I spent 2 months. And here's the crazy thing, is that you're talking about therapy. She ended up becoming my therapy, the Siri stuff. My interaction with her, trying to record her, get her to speak, me speak to her, me typing more because she's telling me stuff. Literally, so after the 2 months of working on it, I don't know if you've heard that track. It's a pretty complex track.
Yes, I have. I am a huge fan of that entire album. I've listened to it probably 40 times this week. I love that album.
Thank you, man. That means a ton to me.
And I am not a person who dances at all ever, but every single time that Bicycle Kings comes on, I cannot stop myself from dancing. It doesn't matter where I am. I was on a ladder yesterday and I had to get off of the ladder because I started dancing, and I had to get down and finish dancing and then get back on my ladder.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful, man.
So that being said, I know that I asked a huge favor for you to let me play Seed earlier in this episode. Can I go out on Bicycle Kings? Do I have your permission to play that song?
Oh, of course, man. Hell yeah.
Oh, awesome. Now, please continue about how Siri helped you recover.
Well, I didn't know it at the time. I just thought I was going to make the whole record was just going to be something with me and her, me and Siri. I didn't know if it was going to be a big record or a short record or 5 songs or 10. But I just knew that I could make this and get it out and get it off my plate and just feel like I'd accomplished something. By the time I get to the end of Church Bells, I'm like talking, I'm still working on my other stuff, therapy stuff, and, working on words on my own. But I just noticed I'm just more interactive because I'm literally interacting with a robot, and she's saying stuff and I'm noticing the words wrong. You know how Siri will say stuff wrong. So I'm correcting her, now I'm typing better. That's why Bicycle Kings, there's less of her. By the time I get to Bicycle Kings, I just thought she was going to be like the second verse or something, and I was able to sing stuff, and I was remembering the words. So I put her just on the intro, and I put her at the end of the bridge chorus. And it just sort of got better and better, and it literally went so far is that by the time I get done with the record, I called Susan Bennett, who is the original Siri.
Yes.
She lives in Atlanta. So we connected, and I sent her the tracks, and I said, not all of it, but this is a lot of the reason why I'm able to talk to you now is because of Siri. And Susan said, it's crazy. She said, when I was, she's the original Siri, so now it's moved on to this other AI stuff. But she said, when I was in the middle of all that, I would get all of these, I think either directly to her or through Apple, there were all these brain injuries that had told the same story, that Siri had become this therapist. It just gave me chills, man. I just, my God. I said, I don't want to freak you out, but I sort of fell in love with you. Like a guy falls in love with a doctor. You know what I mean? I said it just, because I started seeing you around this art form and around these lyrics I'm writing, and you're like saying it, and it's funny that her and her husband, they're musicians. She's a singer. So I'm going to go find them in Atlanta next time they sing. And so I'm on the phone with her, and she does one of the Siri things for me. Those aren't really her. Those are all, she told me how they made that. See, the original Siri was a third-party app that Apple bought. The original Siri was made in Atlanta and was an app on the App Store, and you could just add it to your phone and have Siri, or have whatever it was called then.
Wow.
So that's how Apple uses the App Store. It's sort of their laboratory, and that's why they don't ever what I've heard is they don't ever go after you or try to beat you. They just buy you out because they want the technology. So that's why she's the first Siri, because she was in Atlanta, and she's a voiceover girl in Atlanta that I knew back in the day doing commercials and stuff, which I didn't even realize till we connected. So she said, no, I think they just put down like her different vowels. There's like these 27 things she would say, and then it's just the AI sort of making the words. But she did it on the phone. She said she'll do it at her shows. She'll just do a complete Siri, like say something like, welcome to our show. Like, she did it on the phone. It freaked me out. I was like, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. I fell in love with Siri, and she's talking to me on the phone.
Man, when you do go see her around town, like at a show, it would be amazing if y'all did that as a duet. Church bells versus the television.
That is going to happen. I'm going to hopefully make it happen. I asked her that once. I said, I'm going to be doing a big show, whatever my next one is, probably at wherever it is in Atlanta. I said, would we be able to just work out church bells or even Bicycle Kings, whatever, just where I can get her on the front of it. Bicycle Kings would be easier. If there's less to learn.
It'd be less work for her. Yeah, that's true.
But it'd be so amazing because we just do it like I'd do it unplugged, so her voice would stand out. No, that's a great idea. I'm glad you reminded me. That's amazing.
That would just be mind blowing to see that. I mean, as much as I love that song, to see that happen with actual people in front of me, that would blow my mind.
I got to reach out to her today.
Yeah, you do. And I'm going to reach out to her myself and ask her if I can interview her because
you should.
That's just amazing. So I know that I've kept you, and I appreciate you taking all of this time. I do have one more question before I let you go. Well, two, but so the name of your new album is Life is a Flower, Life is a Gun. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
Where did that title come from?
Well, the song in the record, Life is a Flower, Life is a Gun, that little hook I wrote years ago, I always liked it. It used to be called Sweet Lord before I kind of wrote it and then I kind of rewrote it again, kind of thing. I had another version that I did as a duet, but I kind of went back to my original version is what's on this record. It's just sort of about like the life is made of all of that. It's made of terrible things and beautiful things, but everything's a choice. So, which one are you going to choose? Are you going to choose the flower or the gun? And gun just meaning darkness. Are you going to choose death or life or dark or light? That kind of thing. So that's kind of where it came from. And I've always loved that line. So I just was like, you know what? That might just be the album title.
It's a beautiful line, and I'm glad you named the album that. And that song, again, also is amazing. Are you on social media?
Yeah, I am. I'm not on it a lot right now. I went pretty full, with my publicity team and my social people and all that. But now that I'm sort of not seriously pushing the record right this moment, and I kind of like to back away from it when I am in the beginning of figuring out the next record. So I don't know how social media works for you, but I kind of, if I get drawn into it too much, we still promote the normal stuff like the shows or this or that, but yeah, I'm still on it, but not full blast right now.
Gotcha. Well, scroll down in the show notes and I'll have all of his social media tags, and be sure to reach out and follow and like and tell him what's up. As we're going out, Angie, I just want to thank you so much again for taking this time. And if you're playing anywhere near San Antonio or Austin, holler at a fat kid and I will be there. I will buy you bourbon if you're still allowed to drink bourbon, that is. And,
I'm allowed now.
Oh, sweet. Well, give me a shout if you're going to be out this way. I would love to buy you a bourbon and shake your hand, man.
Definitely. Yeah, I want to get out that way, too. I love that area. You said you're in San Antonio?
Yeah, I'm just outside of San Antonio, but yes, I'm in San Antonio.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Actually, I played somewhere there with Matchbox, some beautiful theater.
Yeah, there's a couple of those. We have a couple of theaters that were built like in the 20s and whatnot, so I'm sure it was one of them.
It was beautiful. No, I'll definitely hit you up, man. I appreciate your time, and this was fun.
Angie, you are an inspiration and a workhorse. You're an angelic creator. So thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, man. I love you, buddy. Thank you so much. And I'll keep you posted about the Southwest thing.
Cool. I appreciate that. Angie, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening and have a wonderful holiday, man.
You too, buddy. Peace. See you, man.
Take it easy, buddy. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I found this note. Your note from today says, My soul was like a stone, rolling down a country road. My soul was like a stone, rolling down a country road.
We were the bicycle kings, rolling on falling leaves.
My soul was like a
from a bicycle we tossed hallelujah and joy, hallelujah and joy to the world out there. In cathedrals made of dirt and vine, just two kids rolling the summertime. On a country road, yeah, where the wildwood grow, yeah. There ain't no heavy load, and your soul is like a stone. God's rolling down a country road, down a country road. We were the bicycle kings in that old swimming pool down by the Rotary. We sailed a boat made of air and poetry. With the crown of moss from a bicycle we tossed hallelujah and joy, hallelujah and joy on our way back home, on our way back, way back. In cathedrals made of sunshine, way back, just two kids ruling the summertime. Oh yeah, on a country road, yeah, where the wildwood grow, yeah. There ain't no heavy load, and your soul is like a stone. God's rolling down a country road, down a country
road.
Hey guys, this is Steve Owens from Fascination Street Podcast here with a very important message. I'm awesome. I bet you thought I was going to say something else, but nope. What's important here is that I am awesome. I started this show because I truly believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear those stories. In the short time I've been doing this show, I've interviewed actors, directors, writers, inventors, podcasters, musicians, pro athletes, Olympic athletes, actual war heroes, even a Bond girl and a luthier, whatever the hell that is, and of course, regular people. From people who wanted to be stars but never gave it a real try, to big company CEOs and people who got to meet their favorite president. I love getting to meet and speak with people who have a story to tell. I feel like everyone does, and it's my job to get them to tell it. You never know who my next guest will be. An Academy Award-winning actor, a platinum-selling musician, or your own mother-in-law. But one thing is for certain, you will be fascinated by their story. So come take a walk with me down Fascination Street. You can find Fascination Street Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and of course, FascinationStreetPod.com. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.